on the golden planet of Zilara, where the skies were always green and the rivers glowed like stars. The palace of the alien king stood high on a mountain of shining crystal. Inside the throne room, hundreds of aliens gathered in silence. Long robes brushed the marble floors, and glowing eyes watched from the shadows. At the center stood Princess Valera, her silver skin glowing under the royal light. Her long violet hair falling across her shoulders. She stood straight, proud, but nervous. Her father, King Xander, sat on his tall throne, wearing the ancient crown of the Zilaran Empire. His face was hard, his eyes cold. A priest stepped forward and held up a silver rod that shimmered like fire. "The tests are complete," the priest said loudly. "The truth cannot be hidden." The crowd leaned in. King Xander stood. "Valera, daughter of Xander, heir to the throne of Zilara," he said in a loud, cruel voice. "The royal blood runs in your veins, and yet you are cursed." Gasps echoed through the room. "You are infertile," he continued. "You will never bear a child. The line ends with you. You are no longer fit to be my daughter or to be a queen." Valera's heart broke inside her chest. Her legs trembled, but she didn't fall. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She had trained her whole life to be strong. She had studied the stars, learned 10 languages, and won every battle. Test, she had always done what was right. But none of that mattered now. "No," she whispered, barely loud enough for anyone to hear. "This can't be true." "It is truth." The king roared. "You bring shame to the bloodline. You are no longer welcome in this palace." The guards moved in. 2 strong aliens grabbed her arms, ready to drag her away. "But father," Valera said, tears in her eyes, "this isn't fair. I've done everything you asked of me. Why enough?" The king shouted. "You will be exiled. From this day forward, you are not a princess. You are nothing." The priest bowed his head. The nobles looked away. No one dared speak for her. The people who once cheered her name now turned their backs. Valera was dragged out of the palace like a criminal. The skies above the mountain turned dark, as if the planet itself felt her pain. Outside the walls, beyond the city, lay the exile lands of cold. Silent place filled with broken machines, old buildings, and forgotten souls. That was where they threw her. No food, no help, no hope. Days passed. Valera built a small shelter from scraps. She hunted for food with her bare hands. Her royal robes were torn and dirty now. Her soft hands became rough. But her spirit did not break. Every night, she looked up at the stars and whispered to them. "I am not broken," she told them. "I don't believe their words. I feel something. Inside me, I feel more." One night, she sat near a fire she had made, watching the flames dance. She remembered the ancient stories of powerful queens who rose from ashes, of warriors born in darkness. She touched her belly, where the king said nothing would ever grow. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from anger. "What if he's wrong?" she whispered. "What if the truth is bigger than his tests?" The wind answered with a soft howl, as if agreeing with her. She didn't know it yet, but something was already changing. The exile was not her end, was her beginning. Far above her, in the blackness of space, a tiny ship moved closer to Zilara. A human ship, lost and damaged, heading for a crash it could not avoid. And fate, watching from the stars, smiled. Because soon, the cursed princess would meet someone who didn't care about alien laws, who didn't believe in royal bloodlines, and who would change her life forever. And inside her, something would awaken that the king never expected. Something powerful, something alive. The night was colder than usual in the exile lands. Dark clouds rolled over the green sky, and strange winds howled like ghosts. Valera sat alone by the dim fire, wrapped in an old piece of cloth. Her eyes stared into the flames, but her mind was far away, remembering the king's voice, his cruel eyes, and the way the nobles had turned from her like she was nothing. Her chest still hurt, not from the cold, but from the deep wound of betrayal. Suddenly, the ground shook. A low rumble spread through the dirt, followed by a blinding flash of light in the sky. Valera looked up just in time to see a burning trail cut across the sky like a wound in space. Something was falling fast, something large. Fire blazed behind it. Sparks flew. It was headed toward the outer valley, not far from where she lived. Then came the sound of a deafening roar, followed by a crash that shook the hills. The firelight around Valera flickered and almost died. A huge cloud of smoke rose in the distance, glowing red under the night sky. Valera stood, heart pounding. "That was no meteor," she whispered. "That was a ship." She didn't hesitate. Us. She grabbed her spear and started running. The ground was rough. Rocks and dry roots clawed at her feet. The air smelled of smoke and metal. As she reached the valley, the light of the burning wreck came into view. A ship, twisted and broken, had torn a long scar into the earth. Fires burned along its sides. Panels sparked. Wires hung like vines. It was not Zolaran technology, it was something else, alien to her. She stepped closer, eyes scanning every detail. Her breath caught in her throat. The ship was human. Her people had always called humans primitive, soft, unclean. But she had never seen one herself. Her fingers tightened around her spear. Part of her wanted to leave, but something in her heart said otherwise. She moved to the side of the ship, where the hatch had been blown open. Smoke poured out. Carefully, she climbed. Inside, the hallway was narrow, metal walls cracked and glowing red. Alarms blinked dimly. Valera followed the weak beeping sound until she reached a small room at the back, and there she found him. A human male. He was lying on the floor, surrounded by broken tools and blood. His chest rose and fell barely. His face was cut, and his clothes were torn. One leg was twisted under him. He was alive. Valera froze. Her mind screamed, "Leave. He's dangerous. He's from another world." But her heart whispered something else. "Help him. He's like you alone." The man groaned. His hand reached up weakly, trying to push himself up. His eyes opened, dark, confused, scared. When he saw her, he tried to speak, but no words came. Just one sound. Help. That one word changed everything. Valera dropped her spear. She knelt beside him and gently placed her hand on his chest. "You're hurt," she said softly, though she wasn't sure if he understood. "You'll die if you stay here." He blinked, barely able to focus. "I'm not your enemy," she said. "I'm not one of them." She took a deep breath and began dragging him out of the wreck. His body was heavy, and her arms screamed with pain, but she didn't stop. The fire was growing. The ship groaned and cracked behind her. Minutes later, she reached her shelter and laid him down on a pile of soft cloth. She worked through the night, cleaning his wounds with melted snow water, wrapping his leg with pieces of her own clothes, and feeding him tiny sips of plant extract to ease the pain. By dawn, the man was breathing steadily. Valera sat beside him, watching his face. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Why did you fall here?" He didn't answer. He was still too weak, but something about him felt familiar. Not in the way of people she knew, but in the way of broken things finding each other. She looked at his hands, rough. Like hers, she looked at his eyes closed now, but earlier they had been full of fear and wonder. Just like hers had been when she was cast out. She didn't know it yet. But this human would bring light back into her dark world. He would awaken. Something inside her the king believed did not exist, and somewhere deep in her belly, a spark had already been lit. For 3 days and 3 nights, the human lay in silence, floating between life and death. Valera never left his side. She brought water in carved stone bowls, crushed herbs with her bare hands, and whispered soft words even when she knew he couldn't hear them. She didn't know his name. She didn't know why he had come. But she felt something deep inside a pull she couldn't explain, as if the universe itself had placed him in her hands for a reason. The exile lands were cold and cruel, but inside her small shelter, warmth had returned. On the 4th morning, as sunlight spilled through cracks in the ceiling, the human opened his eyes. Valera froze. His voice was dry and cracked. "Where am I?" "You're safe," Valera said, stepping closer. "You crashed. I found you. You were dying." He tried to sit up, groaned, and fell back. Legged broken, he hissed. "I fixed it," she said gently. "Not perfect, but it will heal." He stared at her. "You're not human." She nodded slowly. "I'm Zelaron." The silence between them was heavy, but not hostile. The man studied her face, her strange silver skin, her glowing eyes, the way her hair shimmered like water. He had never seen anything like her. Yet somehow, he didn't feel fear, only curiosity. "I'm Jace," he finally said. She repeated the name softly. Jace. It sounded strange in her mouth, but beautiful. That night, under a violet moon, Jace told her about Earth. He spoke of oceans that moved like living things, of trees that reached toward the sun, and of families who laughed together around warm fires. Valera listened, eyes wide. She had never heard such stories. Her world had taught her war, duty, silence now. There was music in his words. In return, she told him about Zillaranat, the lies of the palace. But the truth of the stars, the mountains that sang in the wind, and the stories of her people before. The king turned cold. They laughed together for the first time. Not loud, but soft, like a candle lighting in a dark cave. Days turned into weeks. Jace began to heal. He could walk with help. He crafted tools from broken ship parts, taught Valera human jokes, and drew pictures in the dirt of animals she'd never seen. Valera, in return, showed him how to find food in deadlands, how to hear the sky's voice, and how to survive with silence as a weapon. But something else grew too. A feeling. It was slow at first, a lingering look, a hand that brushed too long, a shared breath in the still night air. Valera would catch Jace watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, and when he smiled, her heart beat faster. She told herself it was wrong. She was alien. He was human. She was royalty, now exiled. He was a stranger from a distant world. But every time she told herself to stop feeling, the bond only grew stronger. One evening, the sky rumbled with distant thunder. Valera and Jace sat by the fire, silent. He looked at her, truly looked. "You saved me," he said. "You didn't have to, but you did." "You looked like someone who had no one," she said. "Like me." He reached out and took her hand. Her skin sparked under his touch. No one had ever touched her like that, not even in her royal life. "Do you believe in fate?" he asked. She shook her head. "I used to believe in bloodlines and thrones. Now, I only believe in what I feel." "And what do you feel now?" he asked. Valera looked into his eyes, and the words came without fear. "I feel alive." Their hands didn't part. That night, they lay close for warmth, for comfort, and something more. No walls remained between them. No law. No king. Just two souls, broken and forgotten, finding light in each other, and deep inside Valera, Something ancient stirred. A warmth that was not fire, not fever. A seed of change. A whisper of life. She didn't know what it was yet, but fate. Fate had just begun its work. The winds of Zalara changed. It wasn't something you could see, but something you could feel. Birds flew lower. The moonlight seemed softer. Even the silence in the exile lands felt heavy, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Valera woke up before dawn. Her body felt different. Not weak, not sick, but strangely alive, as if energy pulsed under her skin like glowing. Rivers, her senses were sharper. She could hear the rustle of distant grass, smell the rain in the air before it fell, feel every heartbeat of the man who lay beside her. Jace still asleep, his face peaceful, his hand still holding hers, as if even in dreams he didn't want to let go. She sat up slowly, placing a hand on her chest. Her heart thumped. But that wasn't all. Her stomach fluttered, not hunger. Something else, something she couldn't explain. For the next few days, the feeling only grew. She was stronger than ever, climbing hills in half the time, lifting stones she once could not move. Her skin glowed faintly in the dark, and her eyes, always bright now, shimmered like twin moons. Jace noticed. "You're glowing," he said one evening, touching her cheek gently. "Are you okay?" Valera gave a small smile. "I feel powerful, but something's changing inside me." He looked worried. "Do you think it's from the herbs? Or the crash?" She shook her head. "No. This is not poison. This is life." Jace didn't understand. Neither did she, until the day she collapsed. She had gone to collect blue root from the canyon edge. The wind was light, the sun was warm. But as she bent to pluck the plant, a wave of dizziness hit her. Vision blurred, her knees gave way. Darkness swallowed her. When she opened her eyes, she was back in her shelter. A soft hand was on her forehead. It wasn't Jace, it was old, rough, and glowing green. The healer, Valera, blinked in shock. "How did you find me?" The healer's eyes were full of wonder. "The Firebird told me," she whispered. "A star fell from the sky weeks ago, and something strange grew in its shadow. I followed the signs." Jace stood nearby, worried and silent. The healer placed a glowing stone above Valera's belly. It pulsed once, twice. Then it turned gold. She gasped. "So it's true," the healer said, voice trembling. "You carry life." Valera sat up, stunned. "What did you say?" "You are with child," the healer whispered. "There is a life inside you. Strong, bright, unlike anything I've ever seen." Valera's hands flew to her stomach. "But I was declared infertile. The king, he said I could never." "The king is blind," the healer interrupted. "He only sees power through blood. But life doesn't follow royal law. Life chooses where it wishes to bloom." Jay stepped forward, eyes wide. "Our child." The healer nodded. "Part Celeron, part human. A fusion never seen before." Lyra was silent. Her heart raced. Her mind ran in circles. A child? Her child? Jace's child. Born not from royal plans or lab experiments, but from love, from exile, from broken people finding each other in a broken world. But joy was not the only thing in that room. Fear came next, because this child would be hunted. Not for its weakness, but for its power. Valera looked at Jace. "We must protect this secret. If the king finds out, he'll come for us." Jace nodded. "Then we stay hidden. I'll build deeper shelters. I'll defend you with my life." "No," Valera said, touching her belly. "You'll defend our life." Outside, thunder rolled across the hills. The winds had changed, and the world would never be the same again. End of Part 4. Agar Opchan 2 Main Part 5. The King Finds Out. BIC Cinematic. Emotional, suspense-filled style. Main lick. Dune approx. 800 words. Audience-grabbing tone. K. Soth. Bete Agar. Op continue Karwana Chate Hain. Ask ChatGPT. The king had not dreamed of Valera in weeks. She was gone from his mind, buried with the shame he had carved into her name. As far as he was concerned, she no longer existed. But the planet remembered. Zalara, live in ways even the king had forgotten, had started to change. The winds shifted strangely. The sky stayed red for days instead of hours. And in the palace gardens, flowers bloomed out of seasoned golden ones never seen before. The priests called it a cosmic disturbance. The king called it nonsense, until one night a royal spy returned from the exile lands, eyes wide. Shaking, he fell to his knees before the throne. "My king," he whispered, "there is something unnatural in the wastelands." Xander frowned. "Unnatural. She lives." That was the first sting, and she is not alone. That was the second. The spy dropped a small device, an old scanning stone. It shimmered and projected a flickering image into the air. Valera, walking, glowing, alive, and with her, a human male. And then came the third sting. The image zoomed in. Valera's hand was resting on her stomach, rounded, full, protectively held. The chamber fell silent. "No," the king said quietly. "It's not possible. She is infertile." "She was," the priest whispered, "but now she glows like the sun. The signs, they speak of a child. A powerful one." The king stood, his face pale with rage. A child born outside the royal blessing. From a human, this is betrayal. This is war against our blood. The generals stepped forward. "What are your orders, my king?" His fists clenched. "Bring them both to me, alive if possible, dead if necessary, but bring the child." Far away in the exile lands, Valera felt a chill crawl up her spine. She didn't know yet that the royal ships had launched. She didn't know that the king had broken his silence. But she could feel something moving in the wind. A warning whispered through the trees. The animals were hiding. The skies were watching. And that night, when she looked into the fire beside Jace, her hand again resting on her belly, she said only one thing. "They're coming." She nodded. "Then we fight." But she shook her head. "No," she said, "we run. For now, the child must live." Jace stood, already packing supplies. "Where do we go?" Valera looked at the stars. "To the shadow caverns. No one dares enter them. Not even royal blood. But will you be safe there?" She looked down at her glowing belly. "I'm not the same as before. I'm something else now, and this child is more." The next day, the royal ships arrived, steel giants in the sky. Fire shooting from their engines, darkness trailing behind them like death. They hovered over the valley, their searchlights, tearing across the land. Soldiers dropped like insects, black-armored, faceless. Cold, the exile lands had never seen such thunder. But the shelter was empty. Valera and Jace were already gone. The commander stepped into the ruined shelter and found only a message carved into the stone wall. "You declared me barren, but life chose me anyway." The commander reported back to the king. Xander smashed his throne in fury. He didn't just want the child. Now he wanted blood. They were surrounded. The sky cracked open above the shadow caverns, royal ships filling the clouds like angry gods. Soldiers in black armor marched through the stone passes, their weapons glowing with red light. Thunder rumbled, not from nature, but from war. Valera stood at the mouth of the cave, her body glowing faintly in the night, her hand tightly clutching. Jesus, she had run far enough. She was done hiding. Behind her, the cave whispered with ancient energy, and inside her belly, life kicked gently. Her child was ready to face the world. She turned to Jace. If we run now, they'll never stop. This ends here. Jace didn't argue. He nodded once and pulled a small device from his belt, a beacon, hidden and silent until now. I called them, he said softly. Who? She asked. My people, he replied. Earth Command. A T. No, I survived. They've been watching. The stars. Valera blinked. Will they come? I hope, he said. But if they don't, we still fight. Moments later, the soldiers reached them. Valera didn't struggle. She didn't scream. She simply raised her head and said clearly, Take me to the king. The palace was colder than she remembered. The same walls. The same throne, but everything felt smaller now. Valera walked calmly into the grand hall. Guards on both sides, Jace at her side, chains on both their wrists. The nobles gasped as she entered. Whispers flew like birds. Is that her? She was supposed to be dead. Look at her eyes. Is she pregnant? Then the king stood from his throne. The room fell silent. Valera, he said, his voice calm and heavy like a storm about to break. You bring shame again to these walls. Valera didn't bow. I bring truth, she said. Xander stepped forward slowly, looking her up and down. You are with child. Yes. From a human. Yes. The king's hands trembled with rage. This is poison to our bloodline. A mistake of nature. You will be punished, and the child will live, she interrupted, and will rise. Gasps echoed again. Xander growled. You dare speak prophecy. Valera looked around the room. No, I speak fact. Test me. The high priest stepped forward. You wish to invoke the right of purity? I do, she said. Everyone gasped. It was the most ancient Lotha trial of truth, a test no one could lie through. If she failed, she would die. Oh. If she passed, the king's word would be broken. The ceremony was set that very night. A grand circle of glowing stones surrounded Valera. She stood barefoot, belly round, eyes fierce. The priest placed a crystal orb in her hand. It pulsed with her heartbeat. Speak only the truth, the priest warned. If you lie, the orb will crack. If you speak truth, it will bloom. Valera took a breath. I am Valera, born of Xander, exiled by my own blood. The orb pulsed. Once, I was called barren, worthless, cursed. The orb glowed brighter, but I am not empty. I carry life created not by science or royal command, but by love. The orb grew warm. I did not break my people's laws. I broke their lies. Now, the orb began to shine. This child in me is not a threat. It is proof. Proof that we are more than bloodlines, more than power. This child is hope. The orb burst into golden light, and from it bloomed a glowing white flower floating in the air. Spinning gently, the crowd gasped. Even the king stepped. Back it was truth, undeniable, unbreakable, for the first time in the palace's long history. A royal law had been shattered, not by war, but by truth spoken with courage. The silence that followed was louder than screams. Xander's face was pale. He looked at Valera as if seeing her for the first time not as a daughter, not as a mistake but as something greater. You, he whispered, almost choking on the words. You were meant to be queen. Valera took Jace's hand. I was meant to be more than that. Behind them, the floating flower pulsed once more, and then vanished. But its light remained in every corner of the hall. No one bowed. No one clapped. They simply stared. Because the world had just changed. The palace had never felt so quiet. No marching guards, no barking orders, no golden music echoing from the towers. Just silence and light. A soft, glowing light that came not from torches or machines, but from truth itself. Valera stood in the great hall, her hands resting gently on her belly. The people surrounded her, not with fear, but with wonder. She had passed the trial of truth. She had broken the lie of her infertility, and she had awakened something powerful in every heart hope. The king sat on his throne like a man carved from stone. He did not speak. He did not move. The glowing flower from the truth trial still haunted his vision. His rule was no longer feared, it was questioned. The nobles whispered. The priests bowed their heads. The people waited. Valera stepped forward and spoke not with anger, but with strength. You built this empire with walls of fear, she said to the king, but fear cannot hold the future. The king looked at her, his voice broken. What do you want? Valera didn't answer right away. She turned to the crowd instead. I was cast out for being different, she said. I was told I had no worth, but in exile, I found something greater than power. I found love. I found life. I found freedom. She looked back at the king. I don't want revenge. I don't want your throne. She paused. I want your seat to be empty. Gasps rose from the room. The king slowly stood. You would take my crown. Valera met his gaze without blinking. No, I will take my people's trust. The crown will follow. And just like that, the silence broke not with screams. Not with war, but with cheers, soft at first, then louder, until the entire palace echoed with voices raised high not in fear. But in celebration, the king removed his crown, and for the first time in Zalara's history, a ruler stepped down not by force, but by truth. Valera was crowned at sunrise. She wore no royal jewels, no heavy robes, just a silver dress made by her own hands, and the glow of new life beneath her heart. Jace stood beside her, silent, proud, and slightly nervous. Are you ready to rule a world? He asked with a grin. Valera smiled. No, but I am ready to change it. He took her hand. That's enough. The people gathered in the square, filling the streets like rivers of joy. Children waved glowing leaves. Old warriors wept openly. The stars above seemed to shine brighter that day. Valera stepped onto the balcony. This world belongs to all of us now, she called out. No more walls, no more lies, no more shame for what we are. From this day forward, Zalara will be ruled by truth, by unity, and by the light we carry inside us. Jace leaned close and whispered, Did you practice that? Valera chuckled. Every night in exile, the crowd roared. Days passed, then weeks. Peace began to grow like a new forest slow. Strong, unstoppable. Alien scholars came from far planets to study Valera's child. They had never seen a being born from two worlds part. Human, part Celeron. The energy around her was unlike anything recorded. She will shape the stars, one elder whispered. Valera only smiled and whispered back. She will shape hearts first. She named her daughter Ilara after the first starlight that touched Zalaran soil, according to legend. And when Ilara opened her eyes for the first time, they glowed with both galaxies, one from Earth, one from Zalara. One evening, Jace sat on a hill. Ilara sleeping against his chest. Valera beside him, watching the moon's rise. Do you miss Earth? She asked softly. He nodded. Sometimes. But then I look at you and her, and I know I'm home. Valera leaned into him. The king once told me I was cursed, she said. But I think I was only waiting. Waiting for what? Kays asked. For you, she said. For truth, For her, above them, the stars blinked in patterns that no one had ever seen before, as if the universe itself had stopped to listen, to honor a beginning.